The headlights carved through darkness like twin knives, illuminating endless asphalt that disappeared into Nebraska's flat horizon. John Matthews shifted in his worn driver's seat, the familiar ache in his lower back reminding him he'd been driving for 11 hours straight. The CB crackled with distant chatter, truckers warning about a speed trap near Lincoln, complaining about DOT regulations, swapping lies about lot lizards and close calls. John kept his radio low, preferring the rhythmic thrum of 18 wheels on interstate concrete. His phone, mounted on the dashboard, showed 2:47 a.m. Karen would be asleep now, curled on her side of their queen bed, probably wearing that old Huskers t-shirt she'd stolen from him years ago. The thought should have warmed him, but lately thinking about Karen left him feeling unsettled, like trying to remember the words to a song you once knew by heart. 14 years. That's how long they'd been married, met at a truck stop diner, outside Omaha where she waitressed nights. He'd been younger then, cockier, convinced that life on the road was temporary, just until he saved enough to start his own shop. She'd refilled his coffee 4 times that first night, each time lingering a bit longer, until finally she'd asked if he planned to drink the whole pot or if he was just killing time. "Depends," he'd said back then. "When do you get off?" Now. Rolling through the darkness at 70 miles per hour, that memory felt like it belonged to different people. The shop never materialized. The road became his life. 2 weeks out, 3 days home if he was lucky. Karen had stopped asking about the shop around year 5, stopped mentioning kids around year 8, stopped meeting him at the door around year 11. His phone buzzed. Text from Karen. "You awake?" Strange. She never texted this late anymore. John hit the voice-to-text button. "Yeah, baby. Everything okay?" he responded. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "Just couldn't sleep. Miss you." "Miss you too. Home Sunday," he texted back. "I know. Counting the days," she replied, but she didn't sound like she was counting. Even through text, John could feel the distance, like she was going through the motions. The last few months, their conversations had become scripts they performed. "How's the road?" "Fine, how's home?" "Fine. Weather okay?" "Yeah, you?" "Same." The phone rang, startling him. Karen's photo flashed on the screen, taken 5 years ago at her sister's wedding, back when her smile reached her eyes. "Hey," he answered through the Bluetooth. "Hi," came her voice, thin and distracted. "I just wanted to hear your voice." "You okay?" "You sound—" "I'm fine," she interrupted. "Just one of those nights, you know? The house gets so quiet." John wanted to say that the truck got quiet too, that sometimes the solitude pressed against his eardrums like water pressure, but instead, he said, "Yeah, I know." A pause, then muffled like she'd covered the phone. "No, it's nothing. Go back to—" Her voice returned, too bright. "Sorry, someone's at the door." "At 3 in the morning?" he questioned. I think it's Mrs. Harper from next door," she explained quickly. "Her cat gets out sometimes. I should go check." "Karen, I'll call you back," she said, and the line went dead. John stared at the road, unease crawling up his spine like cold fingers. Mrs. Harper was 83 years old and hadn't owned a cat since 2018 when Mr. Whiskers died of kidney failure. John knew because he'd helped bury the damn thing in her backyard. 20 minutes passed. He called back, straight to voicemail. Called again. Same result. A text finally came through. "Sorry, fell asleep early. Talk tomorrow." Fell asleep early. She'd just called him. And since when did Karen not say, "I love you," at the end of her messages? John's dispatcher, Big Mike, called on the company line. "Matthews, you awake?" Unfortunately. "What's up?" John replied. "Got good news and weird news," Mike explained. "The Cincinnati load got canceled. Warehouse had some kind of flooding issue. Weird news is they're still paying the contract." "So I'm heading home?" John asked. "Unless you want to wait around for another load," Mike answered. "But nothing's coming up until Monday." "Home, 2 days early." John pictured walking through the door, seeing Karen's face when she realized he was back. Would she be happy, surprised, or something else? "I'll head home," John decided. "Roger that. Drive safe," Mike said. John took the next exit and began the long arc back toward Omaha. He'd surprise Karen, make it special. Stop at that bakery she liked, get those cinnamon rolls she was always talking about. Maybe they just needed more time together. Maybe the distance he felt was just road fatigue, too many nights alone, too many days apart. His phone buzzed. Another text from Karen, but the preview made his blood freeze. He grabbed the phone, nearly swerving into the rumble strips. The full message read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. He won't be back until Sunday." John parked his Peterbilt on Maple Street, 3 blocks from his house. After 18 hours of driving, fueled by black coffee and a growing knot of dread, his hands shook as he killed the engine. The text had to be a mistake. Maybe Karen had meant to send it to her sister about her brother-in-law. Maybe it was about a co-worker covering someone's shift. Maybe anything except what every instinct in his body was screaming. The Friday morning air bit sharp and clean, a contrast to the recycled air of the truck cab. John walked slowly, his steel-toed boots heavy, on the sidewalk. The neighborhood slept around him, porch lights off, newspapers still in driveways, not even the Daniels' psychotic terrier awake to bark at him. As he turned onto his street, John stopped. A silver Infiniti sedan sat parked 4 houses down from his. Nebraska plates, but not one he recognized. Could belong to anyone. New neighbor, maybe, but something about it, too clean, too expensive for this neighborhood, made his jaw clench. John approached his house from the side yard, using the spare key hidden under the fake rock Karen always said was too obvious. The garage door opened. Silently, he'd fixed those hinges last time home, and he stepped into familiar darkness that smelled wrong. Cologne, not his. He hadn't worn cologne in years. Something expensive and trying too hard. The mudroom told more of the story. A man's jacket hung on the hook beside Karen's purse, charcoal gray wool, designer label he couldn't pronounce. John touched it, ran his fingers along the fabric. Real wool. Probably cost more than he made in a week. In the kitchen, 2 wine glasses stood in the sink, lips still stained red. An empty bottle of Malbec on the counter, the good stuff Karen bought for special occasions. John picked up one glass, saw the lipstick mark, Karen's shade, the one that tasted like artificial strawberries. A sound from upstairs, muffled laughter, then footsteps crossing their bedroom floor. John's bedroom floor. The ceiling creaked in the familiar pattern he knew meant someone was walking from the bed to the bathroom. John pulled out his phone, opened the camera, and started recording. He needed proof. Not for anyone else. For himself. Because part of him still wanted to believe he was wrong, that this was all some cosmic misunderstanding that would make sense if he just thought hard enough. The stairs beckoned. John climbed, slowly, avoiding the 3rd step that squeaked, the 7th that groaned. Halfway up, he found a man's dress shirt, white with thin blue stripes, carelessly discarded. He filmed it, then continued up. Karen's blouse came next, the green one he'd bought her last Christmas, inside out and hanging from the banister. More laughter from the bedroom. Then a man's voice, low and confident. "Come back to bed." Karen's response came playful in a way John hadn't heard in years. "Make me." John's vision tunneled, his free hand clenched and unclenched. Every muscle in his body screamed to kick down that door, to destroy everything and everyone inside. But he kept filming, kept climbing. A man's belt, Karen's jeans, black lace panties he'd never seen before. The bedroom door stood slightly ajar. Through the gap, John could see movement, shadows playing on the wall. The sounds were unmistakable now, rhythmic, urgent, punctuated by Karen's voice saying things she hadn't said to John in months, maybe years. John pushed the door open another inch, just enough to angle his phone through. He didn't look at the screen, couldn't bear to see it while it was happening. He just held the phone steady, recording for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Long enough? More than enough. He retreated silently, his body moving on autopilot while his mind processed what couldn't be unprocessed. Downstairs, John walked to the living room, to his recliner, the one Karen always complained about but he'd refused to replace. He opened the drawer in the side table and retrieved his Glock 19, checked the magazine, chambered around. Then John sat down in his chair, gun in his right hand, phone still recording in his left, and waited. The ceiling creaked again. More footsteps. The toilet flushed. Karen giggled, actually giggled, like a teenager. John stared at the ceiling, tracking their movement by sound, mapping their betrayal in squeaks and footfalls. His phone vibrated. A text from Karen. "Miss you, babe. House is so empty without you." John's knuckles whitened around the gun. 43 minutes. That's how long John sat in his recliner, listening to his wife and another man in his bed. He counted every second, using the numbers like a mantra to keep from storming upstairs. The gun grew warm in his hand, its weight, both comforting and terrifying. The phone kept recording, though he'd long since lowered it to his lap. During those 43 minutes, John's mind cycled through 14 years of marriage, searching for signs he'd missed. Late nights at her book club that he now doubted existed. The gym membership she'd gotten last year, coming home flushed and showered. Business trips for a receptionist job that shouldn't require travel. How stupid had he been? How blind? Finally, footsteps on the stairs. Karen's laugh floated down, carefree and genuine in a way he hadn't heard in forever. "I need coffee," she called out. "I want you back in bed," the man replied, his voice smooth, educated. "Coffee can wait." "You're insatiable," Karen teased, and John heard the smile in her voice. They appeared on the stairs, still adjusting clothes, Karen in John's old flannel shirt, his favorite shirt, and the man in boxers and the dress shirt from the stairs, unbuttoned. He was everything John wasn't. Tall, lean, professionally soft with a $30 haircut and manicured hands. The kind of man who'd never changed his own oil or loaded his own truck. Karen saw John first. The transformation of her face would have been comical if it hadn't been destroying everything, from satisfied glow to confusion to recognition to pure terror in under 2 seconds. The coffee mug she'd been carrying shattered on the hardwood floor. "John?" she whispered. Like saying his name quietly might make him disappear. The man, this piece of shit in John's house, wearing John's shirt, stopped mid-step, his hand tightening on the banister. "Who?" "Sit down," John interrupted, his voice steady, almost conversational, as he raised the Glock. "Both of you! On the couch! Now!" "John, please, I can explain." Karen started. "Sit! Down!" he repeated firmly. They scrambled to the couch, the man's hands already up in surrender, Karen pulling the flannel tight around, herself as if it might protect her. They sat close, but not touching, and that small distance between them said everything about what this was. Not love, just intimacy. John kept the gun trained on them while he set his phone on the coffee table, still recording, angled to capture. All 3 of them. "How long?" John asked. "John, please, put the gun down and we can talk," Karen pleaded. "How?" "Long," he repeated. Karen's face crumpled. 8 months. Closer to a year, the man corrected, and Karen shot him a look that could have melted steel. Even now, John noted she was trying to minimize it. "What's your name?" John asked the man. "Derek." "Derek Morrison," he answered nervously. John knew that name. From the real estate office, the one who sold the Harper's house. Derek nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing. "How many times?" John asked Karen. "Does it matter?" She deflected. "Every question I ask matters." "How many times?" Karen looked at the floor. "I don't know." "Guess," he demanded. Maybe 20 times, she admitted. Derek laughed, actually laughed, short and bitter. "Try twice a week since January." John did the math. Over 80 times. In his bed, in his house, while he was on the road earning the money that paid for this house. Who else knows? He continued. Nobody, Karen said quickly. Too quickly. Who knows? He pressed. My sister, she admitted. And Derek's friend Brian. That's it. Your sister. John felt something break inside his chest. The one who had us over for barbecue last month? Smiled at me, served me potato salad, knew the whole time? Karen nodded, tears streaming now. Tell me why, John said. And don't you dare say it just happened. Karen looked up, and for a moment, John saw a flash of the woman he'd married. Then her jaw set in a way he recognized, defensive, ready to fight. You were never here, she said. 14 years, John, and you were gone for 12 of them. I was lonely. So you spread your legs for the first asshole in a suit who paid attention? He shot back. It wasn't like that, Derek interjected, and John swung the gun toward him. You don't get to talk about what it was like, John snarled. You're in my house. You were in my bed. You're wearing my shirt. So shut your mouth before I shut it for you. Derek paled, but stayed quiet. Continue, John said to Karen. He made me feel wanted, desired. Like I was more than just a trucker's wife waiting for her husband to come home and notice her, she explained. I noticed you, he replied. No, you noticed dinner on the table and clean laundry and someone to have intimacy when you'd been on the road too long, she accused. When's the last time we went on a date, John? When's the last time you asked about my day and actually listened to the answer? So you f***ed another man? That's your solution? He countered. I fell in love, Karen declared, and the words hung in the air like poison gas. John looked at Derek. You love her? Derek's eyes darted between John and the gun. We have a connection. That's not what I asked, John pressed. It's complicated, Derek hedged. John laughed, harsh and short. No, it's not. It's simple. You wanted to have intimacy with another man's wife, so you did. At least own it. Fine, Derek said, finding some backbone. No, I don't love her. She's fun. She's available. She's enthusiastic. That clear enough for you? Karen turned to stare at Derek, her face a study in dawning realization. But you said, she started. I said what you wanted to hear, Derek replied, his fear of John apparently overriding his self-preservation with Karen. You think you're the only married woman I've been with? You're not even the only one this month. Karen slapped him, the crack echoing through the room. Derek didn't react, just kept his eyes on John's gun. Get your phone out, John told Karen. Both of you. They complied, hands shaking. Now, I want you to record a statement, a confession. Everything you've done. How long, where, when. Everything, he instructed. John, please, Karen begged. Do it, or I'll share the video I already have with everyone you know, he threatened. Your parents, your work, Facebook, everyone. Karen's face went white. You recorded everything. Your confession is your chance to control the narrative. Now start talking, he commanded. For the next 10 minutes, John forced them to detail their affair on camera. Every sordid detail, every lie, every time they'd laughed about him behind his back. Derek tried to minimize his role, but John kept pushing, kept demanding specifics until both of them had thoroughly damned themselves. When they finished, John had them send the videos to his phone. Then he stood, the gun still steady in his hand. Now, he said with frightening calmness, we're going to discuss consequences. John stood slowly, deliberately, letting the weight of the moment settle over the room like a shroud. Derek and Karen remained frozen on the couch, their confessions now digital evidence in John's phone. The gun felt lighter in his hand, less like a weapon and more like a prop in a play he was directing. Derek, John said, his voice conversational, almost friendly. Stand up. Derek rose on shaking legs, his designer boxers and stolen shirt, making him look like a child playing dress-up. Listen, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know... Didn't know what? John interrupted. That I existed? That Karen was married? You said, you've done this before. I meant, Derek tried. You meant you didn't care. There's a difference between not knowing and not caring, John explained, stepping closer. You know what I realized, sitting in that chair, listening to you two? You didn't just had intimacy with my wife, you invaded my life. You wore my clothes, drank my beer, slept in my bed. You probably laughed about it, didn't you? The stupid trucker out there burning diesel while you burned his sheets. It wasn't personal, Derek protested. John's fist connected with Derek's jaw before the sentence finished. Not a wild swing, but a measured strike that split Derek's lip and sent him stumbling backward. Karen screamed. That felt personal to me, John said calmly. Derek touched his mouth, fingers coming away bloody. You can't. I'll press charges. With what evidence? John challenged. The video where you confess to having intimacy with my wife in my house? The one where you admit to destroying my marriage? Please, Derek, call the cops. I'm begging you. Derek straightened, trying to salvage some dignity. I'm leaving. Not yet, John said. He grabbed Derek's shoulder, spun him around, and drove, his knee into the man's groin with 14 years of suppressed rage. Derek collapsed, a high-pitched wheeze escaping his throat as he curled into a fetal position on John's hardwood floor. That's for every time you touched her, John explained. He nudged Derek with his boot. Get up! Derek couldn't. He rolled, onto his side, hands cupped between his legs, making sounds that weren't quite words. John grabbed him by the shirt, his own shirt, and dragged him toward the front door. Derek tried to resist, but the fight had left him along with his breath. John opened the door and hauled Derek onto the front porch, down the steps, and deposited him on the lawn. Mrs. Harper was watering her flowers next door, and her eyes went wide at the scene. Morning, Mrs. H., John called cheerfully. Just taking out the trash. He walked back to the porch, then turned to Derek, who was trying to crawl toward the street. Your car keys and clothes will be on the curb in 5 minutes, John announced. If you're not gone in 10, the video goes public. If you ever contact my wife again, the video goes public. If you drive through this neighborhood, if you show up at my house, if I see you at the grocery store, the video goes public. And Derek? I know people. Truckers are everywhere, and we talk. We're at every gas station, every rest stop, every small town from here to both coasts. You can't run far enough to escape us if that video gets out. Understood? Derek managed a nod, still gasping. John went back inside. Karen hadn't moved from the couch, her face a mask of shock and tears. He walked past her to the stairs, collected Derek's clothes, found his keys and wallet in the pants pocket. He threw everything onto the curb, then came back to find Karen standing, trying to compose herself. John, we need to talk about this. We can go to counseling, she suggested desperately. No, he replied flatly. You can't just throw away 14 years, she protested. I didn't. You did, 8 months ago, or a year, depending on whose version, I believe, he answered. John climbed the stairs to their bedroom, his bedroom now. The sheets were tangled, pillows on the floor, the whole room reeking of intimacy and betrayal. He grabbed Karen's suitcase from the closet and began packing. Methodical and efficient, a week's worth of clothes, basic toiletries, her jewelry box. Karen appeared in the doorway. You can't kick me out. This is my house too. You're right, John admitted, zipping the suitcase. Legally, it's half yours. But here's the thing, Karen. That video I have, your confession, it shows adultery and Nebraska is an at-fault divorce state. You'll get nothing. No alimony, no house, no truck, nothing. Or you can leave now, we divorce quietly, and you get a clean start. That's blackmail, she accused. That's consequences, he corrected. He carried the suitcase downstairs, Karen following, pleading, threatening, cycling through every emotion except genuine remorse. At the door, she turned for one last attempt. I loved you, John. Despite everything, I did love you, she claimed. No, John said quietly. You loved the idea of me. The safety I provided, the house I paid for, the life I built. But me? The actual man? You didn't love me enough to keep your legs closed while I was working to provide for us. You're going to regret this, "You'll be alone," she warned. "I've been alone for years, Karen. Difference is now I know it," he replied. He handed her the suitcase and her purse. She stood on the porch, looking lost, like she couldn't quite process how her morning had gone from post-coital bliss to homeless in under 2 hours. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. "Derek's probably still crawling to his car. Maybe he'll give you a ride," John suggested with dark humor. "Or call your sister, the one who knew all about this. I'm sure she'll be happy to help." Karen's face hardened. "You're a bastard." "No, I'm a truck driver who came home early," he corrected. "You're the one who decided that wasn't enough." He closed the door, locked it, and listened to her footsteps fade away. Through the window, he watched her pull out her phone, probably calling her sister. Derek's Infiniti was gone, a small puddle of blood on the sidewalk, the only evidence he'd been there. John walked back to his recliner and sat down heavy, the gun still on the side table, the morning sun streaming through windows that had witnessed everything. The house felt different, emptier but cleaner, like after a fever breaks. His phone rang. Karen's parents. He let it go to voicemail. Then for the first time in 14 years, John Matthews cried. Not for the marriage he'd lost, but for the man he'd been. The fool who'd driven through the night while his wife gave away what he'd worked so hard to come home to. He cried until his chest hurt, until his throat was raw, until there was nothing left but a strange, hollow peace. When he was done, John stood, walked to the kitchen, and made himself coffee in a clean mug. He had calls to make, a lawyer, his dispatcher, maybe a real estate agent. But first, he'd sit in his house, his empty, honest house, and figure out what came next. The road was calling, but for once, John wasn't in a hurry to answer. 6 weeks later, John guided his Peterbilt through Wyoming's high country, the Rockies, rising like ancient guardians against an October sky. The divorce had been finalized yesterday, the fastest his lawyer had ever seen, he'd said. The video evidence had been compelling, a word that meant Karen's attorney had taken one look and advised her to accept whatever terms John offered. She'd gotten her clothes, her personal belongings, and $5,000, enough for a fresh start, but not enough to matter. The house was John's, along with everything in it. He'd already listed it with a different real estate agency, one that didn't employ Derek Morrison. Derek himself had vanished from Omaha like smoke. Word traveled fast in their social circle, and the video John had shared with select individuals, just enough to ensure the truth was known, had made Derek radioactive. Last John heard, Derek had moved to Kansas City trying to rebuild his reputation in a market that didn't know him as the homewrecker who'd gotten his ass kicked by a trucker. Karen had moved in with her sister initially, but that lasted exactly 9 days before they'd had a falling out. Apparently, Derek had been telling the truth about not being exclusive. Karen's sister discovered he'd been texting her as well, testing the waters for his next conquest. The sisters hadn't spoken since. The surprising support had come from Karen's parents. They'd called John after the divorce was finalized, not to plead their daughter's case, but to apologize. "We raised her better than this," her father had said, voice thick with disappointment. "You're a good man, John. We're sorry she couldn't see that." They still sent him Sunday dinner invitations, which he politely declined. Some bridges, once burned, were better left as ash. Big Mike had given him the long-haul routes he requested, coast to coast, 3 weeks at a stretch. The solitude that had once felt like punishment now felt like therapy. Every mile put distance between John and the man who'd sat in that recliner, gun in hand, world collapsing. He wasn't running from it. He was metabolizing it, converting pain into forward motion. The CB crackled with chatter, truckers warning about weather ahead, a roadside inspection station, the usual brotherhood of the highway. John had told a few of them his story during late-night drives, and word had spread the way trucker stories do. Embellished here, condensed there, but essentially true. He'd become something of a legend, the driver who'd caught his wife cheating, and handled it like a man. No violence against her, no murder-suicide headlines, just cold, calculated justice. "That's how you do it, brother," an old-timer had told him at a truck stop in Salt Lake. "You kept your cool, kept your dignity. That's worth more than any revenge." But it had been revenge, John knew. Not the hot, violent kind that landed you in prison, but the cold kind that left your enemies alive to suffer the consequences. Karen was working as a waitress now. Her office job had mysteriously ended after the scandal broke, living in a studio apartment on the wrong side of town. She'd tried dating, but in a city like Omaha, everyone knew someone who knew the story. The cheating wife who'd mocked her trucker husband while fooling around. That reputation would follow her for years. John pulled into a rest stop as the sun began its descent behind the mountains. He needed to check his logs, maybe grab something to eat from the vending machines. As he climbed down from the cab, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter now, but I wanted you to know. I'm sorry for everything." John stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. He didn't need her apology. The opposite of love wasn't hate, it was indifference, and that's where he'd finally arrived. Karen was just someone he used to know, a character in a previous chapter of his life. He walked into the rest stop, bought a coffee and a questionable sandwich, and sat at a picnic table watching the sun paint the mountains gold. A young couple sat at the next table, obviously on a road trip, excited and in love. The woman laughed at something the man said, reaching across to touch his hand. Once, that would have made John bitter. Now he simply hoped they'd be smarter than he and Karen had been. His phone rang. "Big Mike. Got a special request for you," Mike said. "Owner-operator out of Seattle needs someone reliable to partner with on a new route. Dedicated lanes, home every weekend, great pay. Interested? Home every weekend. 6 weeks. Ago, that would have meant nothing. Now, with an empty house to sell and a life to rebuild, it sounded like possibility." "Yeah," John answered. "I'm interested." "Good. You deserve something better, John." "After everything," Mike replied. "After everything." John looked at his truck, his home for the last 6 weeks, his refuge and his therapy. The road had saved him, given him space to heal, to think, to become whoever he was going to be after everything. But maybe it was time to try something new, not for anyone else, but for himself. The sun disappeared behind the mountains, leaving the sky painted in purples and pinks. John finished his coffee, tossed the sandwich, even truck stop standards had limits, and headed back to his rig. He had miles to cover before he slept. But for the first time in years, he also had a future that felt like his own. As he pulled back onto the highway, John thought about revenge, justice, and the price of both. He'd won by any measure, kept his dignity, his assets, his reputation. But winning and healing weren't the same thing. Healing took time, took miles, took lonely nights wrestling with the why of it all. But he was getting there, 1 mile at a time, 1 load at a time, 1 day at a time. The road ahead was long, uncertain, and entirely his, and that, John decided as Wyoming faded into darkness behind him, was enough. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.